Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We're going to be exploring some dimensions that we often talk about, but we're going to be touching them in a new and different, very illuminating way. We have with us a musician, a poet, and a writer, and the author of this book, The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce. Wynn Free. He is here from the West Coast in New York briefly, and he was good enough to come into the studio to talk with us about a rather remarkable subject, which is, first, that he has come upon a gentleman who is virtually irrefutably the incarnation of Edgar Cayce. And he makes that case very strongly in this book, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about that. But as a result of authoring this book, Wynn himself has gone through an inner transformation, and we'll be speaking about that and the information that has been coming through him since this book that has great relevance for all of us. Good to have you, Wynn.
Hi, Mitchell. Nice to be here.
Pleasure.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. So, first of all, incarnation. Now, we all know who are familiar with metaphysics that incarnation is a rather natural part of our human evolution. Yet now, with the work you've brought forth here, it's sort of staring us in the face. Why don't you speak to us a little bit about what it is you've observed with this gentleman, David Wilcock, and what some of the evidence is, in your view, that has made this very real?
Well, I was a student of Edgar Cayce 25 years ago when I was a physics major in Berkeley. And I have a very analytical, rational mind. It's not easy for me to accept things easily. And I discovered David's website in 1999, and he didn't present himself very well, but yet he made this insinuation that he had a resonance with Edgar Cayce. And I studied his story, and at the time I was writing metaphysical articles for some web magazines, and I petitioned my editor of The Spirit of Mott, which was Drunvalo Melchizedek's web magazine, and I said, I want to interview this guy. And she looked at his website and she said, Wynn, he's some kind of wacko. And I said, well, he may be a wacko, but he is Edgar Cayce. So she said, you can interview him, but I'm not going to promise to run it.
Now, did David imply that he was the incarnation, or did he just say he felt a very definite resonance with Edgar
The words
Cayce?
he used at that time was resonance. I think he was basically afraid to say reincarnation outright. He was afraid of the responsibility, afraid that people would put him on a pedestal. So he used the word resonance. But as someone who has studied metaphysics myself and read the story, there was no doubt in my mind that he was Edgar Cayce.
So you're the one who basically came up with that conclusion.
I talked to him,
And then
of course he knew it. He
confirmed.
just confirmed it, yeah. But he didn't have it on his website originally. Now he does. And
Probably because of you.
Well,
directly or indirectly.
Indirectly, yeah. I mean, he was scared of what people would say. I mean, it's like, to say you're a reincarnation of somebody that's influenced so many millions of people,
of course,
puts you in a state
of... But, a lot of people have a lot of resonance with lots of people, dead, alive,
right,
etc. So that in itself doesn't constitute an
reincarnation. Right.
But you felt in asking him a series of questions and gathering data of your own...
Well, he put the case up on his website.
He did?
He did. And the case, was pretty well indicative. Like, I just to give you a couple of minutes of the facts.
Yeah, please.
Because I don't want to dwell on the reincarnation aspect. I want to go to who is speaking through this guy.
Surely.
And what they say is happening on our planet now. That's where it's really important. But
first, just give us a couple of details that have persuaded you that this is, in fact...
Yeah. David was living in New Paltz, New York. He read a book on dreams. He started writing his dreams down. He started getting messages as if somebody was talking to him. He thought he was making the messages up. After a week, the messages started to predict things in his future. Then they would predict things in the planet. Then they would give him wise advice. And he was an intellectual. He thought, I'm not going to tell anybody about this, but I got this little private thing going in my dreams and someone's talking to me. So he rigged his room up with tape recorders, and after a year, he had this huge body of data from what he called his dream voice. And his dream voice, after a year, asked him to move to Virginia Beach, which happens to be where the Edgar Cayce Library is. For anyone
the
that doesn't,
home of the ARE.
ARE, yeah. For anyone who doesn't know Edgar Cayce, he died in 1945. He did 15,000 readings.
Known as the Sleeping Prophet.
The Sleeping Prophet, the most credible psychic in the history of the world.
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly the United States.
Documented psychic, most documented. Just the 15,000 readings all done, and 500 books written about him. So David moved to Virginia Beach, and kind of visited the ARE. Now, I'm telling the story now a little bit dramatized so I can go through it fast. Essentially, people stared at him. And he asked, why are you staring? And it turns out he was the spitting image of a young Edgar Cayce. Do we have that picture there, please? And he now went home to his dream voice. No, those there. He went home to his dream voice. And give me the other ones, please. And asked his dream voice, why do I look like Edgar Cayce?
Mm-hmm. And the answer
was, because you were Edgar Cayce. And if you study Edgar Cayce, you will see all the parallels. Except this lifetime, if you're going to do your highest purpose, you're not going to do past life readings and health readings. You're going to explain to your planet what this dimensional shift is, why the Mayan calendar ends in 2012, and what Jesus meant by Ascension. Well, David got a stomach ache. He was 28 years old, and he's got this voice that's been talking to him for a year, and suddenly he finds out that they say he's the reincarnation of the most famous, guy in history. Psychic. And so David starts studying Edgar Cayce, and he finds out that Edgar Cayce, in his own readings, predicted that he would return in 1998, live in Virginia Beach, and maybe a liberator of the world. And then he finds out that his astrology chart, his 5 personal planets, are in the same sign as Edgar Cayce's. 1 chance in 260,000. And then he finds out his father is the spitting image, or looks very close to Edgar Cayce's father. Now, by the way, this is not very well known, but why do people look like their past lives? Is because when you die, your soul energy memorizes your DNA, and when it comes into the body, it programs the fetus with the DNA of the old body. So in addition to your parents' DNA and whatever else, you have strong resemblance to your past lives. And his girlfriend at the time looks like Edgar Cayce's wife. You've heard people come back in soul groups.
Yes.
Right? So, and there was probably 2 or 3 other people.
One looks slightly happier than the other, but I wouldn't use the word happy at all.
So in any case.
Yeah.
So as I studied this whole story, I started reading the readings, and I said, well, if this guy's Edgar Cayce, I want to know everything that he is saying. I want to know what's happening on our planet. I want to know the inside dope. I said, is California going to go into the ocean? What's going to happen?
And if so, when?
And if so, when? Well, the story is humongous. Who was speaking through David identified themselves as a social memory complex, or a group soul. They were composed of billions of individual souls that in previous times had gone through physical embodiment and had graduated from this realm. Not only on this planet, but on other planets through the universe. We've heard of getting off of the wheel of reincarnation, but now this is one of the places you go to when you get off the wheel of reincarnation.
You go to another one.
You join a group soul, and now this group soul is helping planets at lower levels of evolution
go through
their
process.
graduation. And in many cases throughout our history, if I have it right, this group soul has talked to people, channeled to people, and been interpreted as God, okay? And what they're saying is happening on our planet right now is that we are at the end of a 75,000-year cycle. This is something that was predictable like a clockwork,
as they say.
And that through the history of religion and spiritual traditions, there are so many predictions of this particular period. Kali Yuga, the Mayan calendar, 2012, Jesus' prophecies of Ascension in the end times, etc., etc. The Hopis, and in many cases, I can't validate that it's all cases, but in many cases, if not most cases, it was this group soul that was preparing us for this period. And now they're speaking to us in present time through David Wilcock as the reincarnation of Edgar Cayce.
Well, apparently David Wilcock is one of the recipients of these voices.
Yes, yes.
I happen to be sitting with someone who is also a recipient of these voices.
Yes. Well, let's say...
And no doubt there are others, sprawling across the world that are not known to us.
Actually, there's probably hundreds or thousands of people that are getting voices. I have just a quick story is that...
some of them are in psychiatric hospitals.
Yes, absolutely.
That doesn't necessarily mean they're sick, but they're not understood.
I get emails from people, like
some may be sick.
There's a woman in Santa Barbara that said, God, I'm so glad I read your story. I've been having these voices and I've been telling my husband this at night when we go to sleep.
Yes.
And he thought I was crazy. And then I read the same thing in your book. I mean, there are people all over the place that they are trying to
We're on the same crazy wavelength.
Right, exactly.
Glad to have a partner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
what do you feel when is being primarily communicated for our sake? What is it that you feel some of their essential messages are for us to integrate, reflect upon, so that we can prepare ourselves for this graduation? And what some may ask, what is the value of the graduation? Everything is cool here for many people on planet Earth. For others, it's a little bit more discomforting. So I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Well, let me talk about what this graduation means, and this end of a 75,000-year cycle. Spiritual people have referred to an energy which you could call the unified field. Some people call it prana. Some people call it orgone energy. Some people call it shakti. There's some people call it vibes. There's an energy which is not normally recognized by science, but people who are on some path have learned to identify that energy. We've learned that that energy is something that pervades the entire universe. It radiates from what you could call the galactic center. It radiates originally from the center of the universe to the galactic center, and then it goes through our solar system and into the Earth. And each of us is a conduit for that energy when we're open. Most of us are cut off from it. We're only operating in a limited part of our matrix. If we open up fully, even though we can't see it in our mind because it's on the other side of the veil, there's validation that you can have that you're existing in that other part of the matrix. These group souls...
In fact, just for the sake of corroboration, quantum physics actually does articulate the reasoning of this. So it may appear you use the word wacky or metaphysical, but in fact it's really not. It's that from what appears as nothing, the space in between the molecules, the space in between the electron and the proton, for instance, is actually something, just not visibly something. It's, what is commonly referred to in most wisdom traditions as the void. Right. But it's therein that percolates everything that becomes part of the manifest world.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this energy we're talking about is prior to this physical universe. It's built on it. And our solar system is moving through this energy. And the energy is everywhere, but it's not equally strong. It has peaks in it. And the peaks come every 75,000 years, approximately. The Mayan calendar end of 2012 is when the highest peak of energy is. That energy is changing the parameters of our entire physical universe. It's why, and this is not being broadcast to the public, but it's in my book, planets are getting brighter, pole shifts are changing, there's more space dust, there's more sunspots, and of course on our planet,
Solar flares?
with solar flares, we see the weather changes and we see the increased natural disasters. It's all part of this peak in energy. But the most important significance of it is that planet Earth, which has its own consciousness, is shifting its vibrations itself from, in simple language, from third chakra to fourth chakra. Third chakra, as you probably know, is power, individuality. Fourth chakra, compassion, empathy, heart. And we all exist within the vibratory field of planet Earth. So since planet Earth is lifting, we have to match the energy of Earth, or else we cannot continue in the Earth's evolution as participants in it. That means that what
Earth
they say,
as Gaia,
Yes.
i.e. a
Yes.
living being.
Yes.
Not as we tend to impersonalize her and, if you will, reify, as in just an it, but as in a she.
Yes, yes. And what they're saying is that we need to have our heart energies open slightly more than half, 51%, or else...
Or more.
Or more, hopefully, but 51%
Yes.
is the ticket
I got
to
it.
continue to this higher dimensional Earth.
Or stop the world, I better get off.
If you don't have that ticket, what happens is when you die, you get moved to another star system, to another planet that is still dedicated to third chakra evolution. And these groups' souls are the ones who administrate all this on the other side. It actually moves souls from one place to another. So at this period that we're in,
Very beautiful.
there's an extremely important thing about keeping your heart open. And to do that, we need each other. We can't do it by ourselves. We need each other to keep our hearts open, because you can't love without loving someone. And that is the aspect
Our
of this
hearts
message.
live and exist in relationship
Yes.
to each other, as
Yes.
you say, to our notion of God, to the plant kingdom, animal kingdom,
Yes.
etc.
Now, you had asked me, and I didn't answer it, about what happened to me quite in the very...
Now, let me just make the point that you informed me earlier, Wynn, that you hold conference calls
Yes.
in which you speak and do a Q&A weekly on the subjects of what you are receiving, the download that you're experiencing.
Actually,
with people?
what we're doing on the conference calls, let me just say what we're doing, is 2 years into writing the book, which I started writing like a scholar, they started talking to me. I had two personal relationships that kept telling me, those guys want to talk to you again. And of course, I wasn't sure if this was positive or not when I first started.
Or real.
Or
for that
real,
matter.
or if they were crazy, except I started having miracles and future predictions. And I just watched their intent over a long period of time. And I said, I think I can trust this. And then I said, would you guys be on a conference call? If I did a conference call, would you be energetically present? And they said they would be. And so we started doing this a year ago, and I said, this is an experiment. We'll see what happens. And people that are coming into the call are having miracles, they're having healings, because the big thing about this is that we can energetically connect with those other dimensions. Now we have the voices from those other dimensions saying, here we are, come on up, and they are there. And they're making themselves available to us. We started doing the conference call one night a week, And now we're doing it 7 nights a week because the people wanted to do it. I got people volunteering, saying, we want to do a meditation. I don't want to do this myself. I just said, I'm just going to do Mondays. And it's been extraordinary because people are having experiences.
And the healings, for instance, give 1 or 2 examples of what has
what we do is we put things in the light. So some woman put some kind of pain in the light that she was having.
Like a physical pain
physical
or
pain
emotional?
that she's had for a long time. And that night she went to bed and she felt like hands on her back, and she woke up and it was gone. Another woman, this is an interesting one, lives in a house that every time it rained, the rain would dump into her basement and she would get sick and get mold, and she kept putting it on the light. And so this has been going on for 7 years for her. And then suddenly it rained and there was no rain in the basement. And I keep thinking this must be a coincidence. And then one night she looks out her back door and she sees this white light running around her property, but she's looking up and she doesn't see it from anywhere. And she said, Wynn, ask them what that light is. And I did, and they said, we were just doing a reconnaissance mission to make sure that we redirected the water okay. And of course, my sister had lupus, and it just disappeared from her medical charts because we asked.
You asked for her healing.
I asked for her healing. This is like before even the conference calls, when we first started doing these channelings, and they started talking to me.
Remarkable.
But most of all, these voices that were coming through personal relationships were validating everything in the book. I would ask, well, is Ascension real? Are we really going to be leaving this realm and going to another realm? And when is that going to happen? And how's it going to feel? And I asked it in such a way that I didn't tell the answer. And they answered precisely in the information that was coming through David Wilcock, which was a little bit disarming because it said, geez, maybe I have got it right, okay? Which is more responsibility than I would wish to have, okay? It's like... So,
as a songwriter, musician, you didn't think you were going to be waking up into this.
No.
So, well, now that you have, primed the pump about Ascension and it looking one way and not another, what are you referring to? What was the communication?
About Ascension?
Yeah.
Okay, now this is something that I would suggest that no one believe me, that I'll tell you what they say, but you have to read this. If it's true and you're one of those that are going to qualify for this, it'll resonate with you. Remember I said that there's a higher dimensional earth that's being established, and there's going to be a splitting of souls.
Through the 4th chakra.
Through the raising of vibrations. Well, there's 2 ways that you can get into this higher dimensional earth. One is you can die and you can reincarnate there, okay? The other way, there's going to be this process where people are going to disappear. This is exactly how they say it from both group souls. Disappear from this realm, end up in a holding realm where there's beings communicating to you, and come back after the earth goes through its transformation. Now, they don't answer this directly, but one of the implications was that it might be necessary. There's a lot of things on the planet going on that can create fear. We see that. And that there's a lot of forces vying on the other side for control of this planet. Ascension is one of the ways to make sure that you don't get caught in a flow of fear that could block you from moving up to this other realm. And if I have it correct, Jesus was very much connected with these soul groups, and that they were using that as a way to try to prepare mankind for this possibility, but not to start a religion, more in the sense that Jesus would say, these things I do, you can do, etc., etc. So
let me just back off this for a second and synthesize. One can, in moving through the transition, disembody, i.e. physically die, and come back in the wheel of incarnation,
right,
and come back at a time after and during the transition to the 4th chakra of the earth.
Right.
Or an individual on the planet right now, do some level of withdrawal from life as usual, and in a sense work on and contemplate and be with themselves during this process and stay embodied while they ascend from the third to the fourth chakra, right in correspondence with the earth herself.
In the channelings I've done, and in the channelings of David, and they're actually saying that people are going to disappear from this realm. Physically. There is another realm.
And relocate
there's another
physically.
Realm, yes, there's another.
In this other realm that'll be in direct communication with the voices.
And in fact, what they've said was that the first groups, that it's going to happen in waves, not just once. And the first groups that this happens to, they're going to return in light bodies to be communicating to those people they care about that it's okay and not to be afraid. And they said this through David Wilcock and my own readings, exactly the same thing. Yes. This is where I said, please don't believe this, because I don't want the responsibility of saying this is right. I'm saying you owe it to yourself to study the material, to see if it resonates with you, to see if you trust it.
Got it. Wonderful. Well, this is very valuable material, I feel, that you're bringing forward here, Wynn, and really making a beautiful contribution to people.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. If people want to get in touch with you through the website?
Higher-vision.org leads to all my other websites.
Okay,
it's a master website.
Very good.
And let me say that on these conference calls, because these group souls are working with the energy of the people on the call, if there's enough people on that call in a certain area, a disaster could be thwarted in that area. That's what they tell me.
Could be neutralized.
Yes.
Wonderful.
So,
thank you very much. We've been speaking with the author of this book, The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, but Wynn is bringing a lot more than that to the table, even though this is juicy. Thanks again for
Thank you, Mitchell. Thank you so much.
Great to have you. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed that as I did. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.